Hello. Today marks the feast of St. Gervasius and Protasius. In the diurnal, it's usually indicated by a simple commemoration. So it's not a feast that enjoys the full liturgy of the hours. But it does raise an interesting question, because St. Gervasius and St. Protasius, there's very little we actually know about them. All we can gather is that they were brothers, and that they were both martyrs at different times. I think Gervasius was scourged to death with the leaded whip, while Protasius was beheaded. So they suffered differently. But the question is, of all the countless millions of Christians who suffered some form of martyrdom, why do we remember them? It sounds a bit churlish, really. It's, these are saints of God. We have to remember that. And it turns out the only reason we really remember them is thanks to St. Ambrose, who was responsible for dealing with their relics. And so it's only from the work of a saint who is better known that we've heard of the others. And it makes you wonder, well, what about other saints? What about people like St. Blaise, for example, who's famous for blessing their throats? We've heard of St. Swithin, but how much do we know of him? St. Eanswyt, do we know much about her? St. Odile, there's another saint that very rather obscure. And you can go through, for example, the Gregorian canon, and you'll see, for example, the Gregorian canon has two sets of saints separated by the consecration. And the first set will be the 12 apostles, Peter and Paul, Andrew, John, James, John, Thomas, etc., etc. And in the latter half, you've got various martyrs, such as John the Baptist, St. Stephen, Agatha, Lucy, those sorts. And you'll see the name, one of them, I can't even remember which it is, see the name Alexander. And you think, well, who is he? There are actually lots of Saints Alexander, and we think that this particular Alexander is a bishop who was renowned for battling against the Arian heresy. So you sort of get an idea of who these people are, but they're not well known. And it seems to be that there are so many saints who are never remembered. If St. Gervasius and Protasius can have a commemoration, then you think, well, what about someone else? And it's well worth remembering that sainthood is recognised by God, and that word saint always refers back to God. Sanctus, the people who are saints are those who are separated out of the world for the purposes of God. That's why we're called to be saints. We're called to be separated for the work of God and for salvation in Him. So we are not expecting everyone to remember every single saint. We can't do that. And God knows we can't do that. Sainthood is about Him and not about the people. We turn to Christ, we turn to God, and the saints help us. They are with us in their teaching, they're with us in their sufferings, and they are with us spiritually. We are told we are told that they are like Christ. Why? My favourite verse again, 1 John 3:2. They see him as he is, and so they are like him. That means they can hear prayer. It means they can offer intercessions. It means that they can intercede because they are like Christ. And in being drawn into Christ, our prayers are drawn in with them. So there may be many of saints whom we don't recognise, and that's not a problem for them, because they see God and they rejoice in that, and because they are in eternity, they are with everyone who has ever existed, who has gone into eternity with them. And so here's me sitting here. If, God willing, I am permitted to enter into eternity, I am with them now, and the same goes for you too. So we don't need to get fussed about remembering every single saint. But likewise, we do have to think about them. If these folk, if Gervasius and Protasius are there in the missals, if they're there in the breviaries, then they are there for a reason. And in this case, St. Ambrose is a connection. He remembers them. And so he connects them to us. So we've got that extra connection with God through St. Ambrose and through St. Protasius and Gervasius. We're in this together. We have a greater sense of the network. If we think of the church as being this network, this complex body, where all the cells and the nerves are all intertwined, interlocked together, that not every cell is nearby every other cell, but we are nearby, so we need to rely on the ones that we're nearby. That's why we have a patron saint, because they are somehow nearer us than others are. Even obscure saints, like I think one of my favourite obscure saints is an old Welsh saint called St. Pier, who appears to have been an abbot who, while drunk, fell down a well. And I think one of my Welsh brethren, I'm sure, will be able to help me on this. But apparently the waters of the well became highly efficacious. How, I don't know. But again, you've got these people shrouded in time, which is quite wonderful. The saints are here for us, and we may not even know their names. We certainly don't know the angels' names. There are very few names of the angels we know. We're not permitted to know, because it isn't about them, it's about God. And the saints will always, rather than point at themselves, they'll always point at God. Look at an icon of the Blessed Virgin Mary. She will never be pointing at herself, she's always pointing at her Son. Her eyes will be looking at you. You look at an icon of Our Lady, she'll be staring at you, inviting you to come in and see what she's pointing at. Who's she pointing at? She's pointing at Christ. Same is true with St. John the Baptist. He will always be pointing to Christ. Look at a rood screen, for example, and see St. John and Our Lady pointing towards Christ. That's what you do as a saint. So it doesn't matter if you forget a feast day, as long as you are seeking the company of the saints. That's all that can be asked for, because the saints are the people who show us that salvation is really possible. Of course, we have our trust in Christ, but it is our trust in Christ that we see made real in the persons of the saints, and that's why we venerate them, not worship them. We venerate them. They make our hearts sing. They make our spirits soar. And they point us to Christ, and there we fall in worship. And they fall in worship beside us. And as we cast our crowns before Christ, they cast theirs. They are with us together. They are our friends whom we don't see. The communion of the saints. So God bless you. God bless you if you struggle to understand the intercession of saints. God bless you, and may you know how loved you are through the ministrations of those friends that we don't see. God bless you, that you may come to have an affinity with the saints of God and find that uplift, that spiritual fillip that will lift your heart to Christ and lift your eyes to him. And God bless you that together with St. Ambrose and St. Gervasius and St. Protasius, we may all fall on our faces in worship before the one true God. God bless you, and please pray for me.